Okay, we are talking today about aft AMR, aft auxiliary machinery room, or as Canfield calls it, aft diesel. And as you will see, there is a pretty sizable diesel engine down there. But we thought we would come back to the giant diagram of the ship and show you exactly where the space is. So we are here. On the other side of this bulkhead is the machine shop, and we are on second deck. Right here, this is the main deck. This is what you would see as on deck if you walked up to the ship and stood outside of it. We are here on second deck. Broadway's here, and we are going to be going all the way down right there. Aft AMR. All right, so that's where we're going. Let's head down there right now. We are down, again, here's Broadway. We're at the very aft end of it. Curved bulkhead over here is turret 3. And we are gonna head down. Here we are. Welcome to aft AMR.
All right, it is 4 o'clock, and I am not on camera. So let me go find.
I'm right here.
Let me find.
Hey.
Marianne. So hey, guys, it's there went my audio.
No, you're good.
Hey
You're
guys,
good.
it's Dave Canfield, the Battleship Tech guy. This is our first live stream out of somewhere in the deep in the bowels of the ship. We built some equipment that would let us do this and walk around and show you some areas of the ship. And this area is special to me because this is where I worked when I was an 18-year-old kid. So this is the after auxiliary machinery room. And I'm going to follow Marianne around and see what we can find.
All right.
All right.
I think you should show them the trick over here.
So
yeah.
This is American Locomotive 6-cylinder. My audio is cutting.
No, you're good.
Out. No, I can hear it.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is a American Locomotive 6-cylinder emergency diesel generator. And when I was down here when we were trying to film before, I was fiddling with this, and Marianne was asking me what I was doing, and that is this is the emergency shutoff for the diesel, and I was just absent-mindedly playing with this 1939 piece of equipment that I used to stand watch on almost 30 years ago. Actually, more than 30 years ago now. Man, that makes me feel old. So, anyway,
I like that.
This is kind of cool. This is I could go into the great, excruciating technical detail on the diesel, but that's probably not what the video is for.
Yeah. So one of my favorite things about this space is that you can see all 4 prop shafts in here. And I've tried to convey that on video before. I think the best way for us to do it is for one of us to stand under shaft 4 and the other to stand under shaft 1 so that people can get a scope of what this is like.
Okay, so I'm
on this side.
I was going to say, you
right.
head to port, I'll
head
to starboard.
So that's 3 right there.
So this is 1, and I'm going to duck
4.
under it. And then
all right, you ready?
I will. All right, so I'm pretty close.
I can still barely see you.
Yeah, I can't see because the
I'm
shaft's in the way.
I'm waving my hand.
So we're gonna come back this direction.
Come back this way.
So this is shaft number 2 that I'm about to duck under.
And I'm going under number 3.
And we're back in the
go.
center line of the ship. So this is the only place on the ship that you can see all 4 shafts in one space. And when we were standing watch down here, you had to paint. Everything had to be painted. And so people would be like, "What are you going to do?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to paint the shaft." Because you could take the chipper and you just hold it on this shaft and it's like a lathe and carve the paint off. Take your paintbrush. Look at the lines. So, board sailors.
Yeah. So you should tell the people the story of actually meeting the ship for the first time.
Well, the first time ever.
The first time ever.
So that's sort of a long, twisty, turny story. I came from a long line of Navy in my family. I wanted to be in the Navy since I was a child. Wanted a battleship. Definitely just wanted a battleship. And was trying to do everything perfectly. I was raised by a W-4. And for those of you who have a military background and might be chief warrant officers, apologies for what I will say next. But my dad was kind of the quintessential chief warrant officer. He was about 6 feet any direction you measured him, built like a tree stump with knuckles that dragged on the ground. But actually not entirely true. But I wanted to be the perfect sailor, and so, I wanted to be on a battleship because it was such a cool piece of history. And so the first part of that story was I had asked for a battleship. I got my dream sheet. It's a lot of static. Hold on. I got my dream sheet, which is I found out later what the Navy uses to determine where they're not going to station you.
Oh.
And it asked me for 3 ports, 3 home ports and 3 classes of ship. And so I said I wanted San Diego, because that's where I'd grown up, and there's a huge naval concentration. Long Beach. Actually, I wanted Long Beach first because there were 2 battleships there. So Long Beach, San Diego, Treasure Island. Wanted to stay in California. Yeah. And then for the class of ship, I put battleship, battleship, battleship. Because I just wanted a battleship. So I get my orders. It says on the front page, USS Iowa, BB-61. And I thought, yes, I have a battleship. And I turned the page and it said, home ported, Norfolk, Virginia.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there's been some terrible mistake here. Clearly, I'm not supposed to go to Norfolk. Well, as it turns out, the ship was not in Norfolk. The ship was underway on a Mediterranean cruise. And so on my 18th birthday, I got on a plane and flew to Rota, Spain, because my orders were to report on board Battleship Iowa, Rota, Spain, 08 November 1987. So I get to Rota. I'm 18 years old. I'm broke. I don't speak the language. I don't know anybody. I walk down to the pier, and there's nothing but water there. And I stood there on the pier and looked out over the bay, and I thought to myself, well, I'm apparently UA as well. It's unauthorized absence, right? And it was a world without cell phones, a world without the internet, and it was pretty terrifying for a young kid. It was like, well, now what do I do? I have my orders. They say to meet the ship here, and the ship is not here. So it took me about 4 days of running around Europe to finally catch up with the ship. I rode with the mail in the back of the state truck from my air France. From my air down to Marseille, and I met the ship in Marseille on November 12th, midnight, November 12th. So I walk on board, and it's dark. I'm wearing a baseball hat because, that's what you did. And I walk up the brow, and the guy says, oh, wait over here. So I start wandering aft, and I wandered aft to the midships. I was looking at some of the Spanish ships that were behind us. And all of a sudden, I thought to myself, where are the guns? I mean, it's supposed to be a battleship. It's supposed to have big guns. And I looked out, and I couldn't see anything but the flight deck and the water behind us, and I was kind of disappointed. Because I thought, man, it's very impressive. And what it turned out to be was I was standing underneath the guns. And so I looked up, and here are these massive, massive guns that carried out over there. So yeah, that was my introduction to the battleship.
Wow. Hey, Forrest, I think my camera just cut out.
Yeah.
.gov on it.
Okay, cool.
So,
Well, I'll just stand here while I'm coming back.
right?
It's all good.
I'm gonna,
Right now, Moran, you're on camera.
yeah, I was going to say you're on camera, so
Yeah.
there you
All
go.
right. So while we've just got your camera, what was it like to work in here? What did you do? What were your duties?
So this is kind of an interesting space. It's my opinion, belief, although I haven't verified it with our historian, that this particular space was supposed to be like a pump room, only manned when necessary. And we manned it 24/7. We stood watch down here. This emergency diesel is supposed to start in automatic. There's a high pressure air compressor down here that's used when you shoot the 16s. There's 2 of the fire and flushing pumps down here, and there's a lube oil purifier and some auxiliary equipment. I worked in a division called Auxiliaries Division, or A-Gang, and we did everything in engineering that nobody else wanted to do, basically. And so this was one of our spaces. It had a lot of electrical gear. It had some pumps. And we basically took readings on the line shaft bearings, made sure that they weren't overheating, and waited for the power to drop so that we could man the diesel.
Did that happen often?
More often maybe than it should have, but less often than it could have.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful piece of equipment, but she was persnickety, and you had to monkey with this. It would overspeed and whatnot.
You're
And
back, Moran.
so
Got it. Thank you.
so yeah, there were a variety of duties. It was kind of interesting. People get confused about what did you do on the ship.
Yeah.
There are actually 2 things that happen most days, almost every day. One is the regular work day, and that runs from 8 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? 08 to 16. And
When Days of Our Lives started.
shush. All right, so anybody on the stream who was in A-Gang in 1980s knows that actually the workday went to 16:30, but for A Division, there were a large number of people that gathered around that 19-inch color television in the berthing to watch days. And yeah, that was just a thing. So I heard the music the other day, and I'm like, man, Bo and Hope probably aren't even there anymore. Anyway, if they are, they're old. So they've taken Stefano DiMera's place, or anyway. Sorry. It was a pretty interesting time when you had all of these manly men standing around the TV doing running commentary like Mystery Science Theater 3000 on Days of Our Lives. But yeah. But the workday. Sorry.
Yes, the workday.
So 08 to 16:30 is the workday, and then you stand watch as well. And so if you are not on watch during the workday, you are working. So you're doing maintenance, you're painting, you're doing those other things. If you are on watch in engineering, you are operating equipment. So the watch down here was basically the emergency diesel generator operator watch. And then you could be assigned down here and you would paint some of these lovely colors, etc. Okay, so I would just like to say, as the tech guy, this is not the fault of the tech. This is the GoPro Hero 8 camera, and I have terrible, terrible things to say about the GoPro Hero 8, even though it is apparently coin of the realm. I have fought with these 2 cameras for days, and they do not like my my Android setup. They really desperately want to talk to an Apple
We're
device.
back again?
Not yet.
Okay.
So, anyway,
It's all good. We're still good.
we have audio.
Yeah.
See, the audio.
And we've got your camera.
Well, so far. Also, a GoPro Hero 8.
Yes.
So
the workday.
the workday's 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. You have Sunday's holiday routine.
You have
and
Sundays
then-
off? Sort of?
Sort of. You only
Wow.
stand watch, right? And so the watch runs, if you stand in there are 3 watches and 3 section duties. So you stand 12 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 12. Now on this ship, we dogged the watch every Sunday. And what dogging the watch on Sunday meant, no, it was good every
Yeah?
Sunday.
I hate
Because
dog
you
watches.
stood the watch for a whole week. So you'd stand 12 to 4s for a week. And then on Sunday in the afternoon watch, the 4 to 8 would stand 4 to 6. Then the oncoming watch section would stand 6 to 8. And so the entire watch rotated backwards one. So you stand 4 to 8 for a week, you stand 12 to 4s for a week, you stand 8 to 12s for a week. My brother's ship, he was on USS Vincennes. They dogged the watch every day.
No.
And I just thought to
No,
myself,
no.
I thought, how did you, I would never know what time
Yeah.
it was. I wouldn't be able to sleep. So it was pretty cool on here. In 3-section duty, we dog the watch every Sunday. So you had kind of a routine that went on. Sunday, you only stood watch. So there was no work day. It was called holiday routine. And sometimes on Saturday, but usually it was a 6-day work week. So, you know, if you weren't on watch, you were chipping paint or painting or turning a wrench or, you know, whatever other maintenance needed to be done. It's kind of interesting because now we have a crew of 18 people,
Yeah.
and it's the same size battleship. We had 1,800 people in the 80s doing maintenance, so it's a little more challenging now.
Yeah.
But I was asked by somebody. Stan had done a beautiful deck restoration. I was asked by somebody that came on. They said, "Oh wow, do you guys holy stone?" And I'm like, "No, because we don't have 1,800 people. We use a holy deck sander." So.
So how noisy was it in here?
Double hearing protection required.
Wow.
So it was pretty loud.
And did it jump around, or was it pretty steady?
You are just forward of the screws, and
Yeah.
so
it jumped a lot.
It bounced around a fair amount. It's sort of a constant vibration. You get used to it.
Yeah.
It gets to the point where you don't notice it, but I notice it not being there. This space is kind of special to me because the first time that we did we attempted this live from aft AMR, and it blew up. Was the first time that I've been down in the space in about, probably, it was the second time I've been down here since we got the ship out of mothballs.
Wow.
And everybody looks at me and they go, "Oh my gosh, why? Did you have some emotional trauma down there?" I said, "No, I saved my emotional trauma for elsewhere on the ship."
Yes.
I needed a place on the ship and still need a place on the ship where where I can just be awash in memories like my other shipmates when they come back and visit. I've been involved now with the restoration project for 12 years, and I've been on the staff for 9, and I served on board as a kid for 2. But I will tell you, those 2 years between 87, 89, 87 and 90, those were much longer than the 9 years I've been involved on the staff here. They just were. So.
Yeah, a lot of formative stuff going on too.
Absolutely.
Do you have any favorite stories from in this space that you want to share?
I have a ghost story. The audio guy. I want to go back and see what the
go back
comments are, or Forrest, if
Yeah.
if there are any comments, go ahead and shout them into the stream.
And
But,
guys, if you have questions, definitely shoot them our way. We want to answer them.
So, but the audio guy said it's a ghost, and I'm like, okay, so I'll share my
Bring
ghost
it.
story. So this space is supposedly haunted, as are all of the shaft alleys behind here, by somebody called Chief George. Now, that was something that I heard when I came on board, that Chief George haunted aft diesel, aft AMR, same
Yeah.
space. And so I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Well, we had a sailor in A Division who I'm not going to name because he's still around and we are connected on Facebook. And he came bolting out of the space one day, just flying out of the space, and said, he said, "You can kick me out of the Navy. I'm never going down there again." And he wouldn't talk about it. And so I was a newly minted 3rd class, brand new crow on my arm. Oh, sorry, hopefully that wasn't in the video. But and I thought, I get to be in charge of the space. I'll be in charge of the space. I ain't afraid of no ghost, right? and so I came down here, and this was the first space that I was ever truly in charge of in the Navy. I was 19 years old, and people say all ships are haunted and everybody has a ghost story, and I'm not saying I believe in ghosts per se, but there was a deck plate over here, and it's been cut. This one that's cut right here. This deck plate used to be kind of warped. You couldn't walk across it without it making a pretty distinct noise. I mean, you hear it when you walk across some of these other loose ones. So you would be down here and it would be quiet-ish. I mean, the machinery's running, and you'd hear this deck plate rattle, like somebody's like there's weight on it, and then like footsteps, and you're like, "Oh, come on, this is not real. It's fine. It's not real." And then, so one day, I was sleeping on watch. Not that we would ever sleep on watch, because no sailor would sleep on watch. It endangers the vessel, But let's say just hypothetically that I was really tired and I was asleep on watch. And what we would do is we would turn the exhaust ventilation on high, and we would turn the supply on low. And so it would suck the air down, and we close the hatch. And so it would low pressure the space. So if anybody opened the hatch, first of all, it was really hard to open because it was vacuumed shut, and it made a tremendous amount of noise. And then when they did get it open, your ears would pop. So if you were, curled up somewhere, squirreled away on the space, there's a pretty good chance nobody could get in without waking you up. Well, we worked hard, and I was tired, and I was face down, drooling in the logbook. That kind of just out cold.
There's an image.
And Captain, he's around too, and he's on my Facebook. So anyway, Captain Musali,
Not do it.
Right? Captain Musali ended up coming down into the space with his Marine orderly, and I didn't wake up. And I have this memory of being shaken awake, like somebody had grabbed my shoulders and shook me awake. And I came sputtering awake right as he walked around the corner over there, around the corner of the phone booth, back by where the laptop set up. And after the captain left, I went all through the space looking, and there wasn't anybody here. So that's my Chief George story.
So he's a good ghost. He takes care of people.
Well, he's a chief. Takes care of his guys.
I wonder what that other guy that did that.
Well,
he didn't have quite the same result.
He's a chief, right? My kids, I tell my kids, I am the nicest guy you will ever meet. But they have a phrase that on certain occasions you may meet the chief. So, meeting the chief is not a positive thing for them. So.
All right, should we take a walk through and show more of the space?
All right. So we talked a little bit about the diesel. As we come around here, we have the emergency diesel generator switchboard. So this is kind of interesting because this switchboard is what automatically in air quotes, shifts the load between the main bus and the emergency diesel. And it had a nasty habit of getting stuck halfway in between the buses and bursting into flames, which might be why they had people down here often. Now, again, like any good sailor telling sea stories, you tell this like it happened 2 times a day.
Yeah.
It did not.
It might happen like twice.
It did not, but it had a reputation, right? And so this is the switchboard, and then if we turn around, there's a this used to be a Worthington high pressure air compressor. In 1988, it was replaced with an Ingersoll Rand, and so this is 10,000 psi. We only used I want to say 3,000, but we couldn't get a 3,000 psi air compressor. Titchy.
I think you're good.
Let me try that again. So, what did you do with that? There it is. I might be out of range, actually, of the audio.
Yeah.
I got you.
Let me come around the corner.
I think you're good.
All right, so back here is, and
It's funny, the way the paint's cracked off over here almost looks like sailor art.
yeah, it is on. We used to do stuff. I don't know.
I think you're cutting in and out.
Yeah.
Mine is loving life.
Moran, I hear you fine, David.
Yeah.
You're getting kind of fuzzy.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, while you do that, let me show the
I was going to say.
the painting
the
over
corner.
here that I enjoy. It's very random, and it looks like a stoplight. Did you do that?
So that it wasn't me personally, but it was when I was down here.
So when you were down here, somebody on your watch or
Somebody in my division.
in your division?
My division.
Okay.
So. They
We
get
have a few
closer.
questions.
Yeah.
Um,
You got
Are we-
questions for us? Go.
Yeah, we got one. Are we standing on top of a double/triple bottom?
Are we
It is-
standing on top of a double?
Pretty sure it is a triple bottom. I would need to look at the prints. To be completely honest, I didn't care when I was working down here, and now that I do, I really haven't looked. I know the ship has a triple bottom in places, so I suspect that it's a triple bottom.
Another question here. Is this BB-61?
It is.
Yes, it is.
Big Bad 61. Let's see.
I'm trying to get you all some sort of up-close shots of things that are in here. This
So it
really
was
is a cool
BB-61 that asked if we were standing on a double or triple bottom.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if that is our engineer, who would know better than I. So.
So, David, all these sort of... Can you see my feed at all?
I can. It's a little bit delayed, but yeah.
What are all these?
I need like 4 seconds. Oh, so those are, here, I'll walk over there. Those are breakers, believe it or not. They're
Wow.
actually fuses.
Wow.
And the switchboard is actually live, so I'm not going to open it up and show you.
I'm fine with that.
But if you were to open these, so like this is just a latch, and if you were to open this and pull it open, it's a knife switch. And so the fuses are actually inside of here. When you pull it down, it opens the knife switch, and then you can slide it over, and there's dead space, and then you can close it and latch it. To energize one of these circuits, you would pull this latch, pull this down, slide it over, and slam it home.
Wow.
So it's a little bit better than the open switchboards, like, you know, Titanic era, but it's still like right there. You can
This
open it
is-
up and stick your hand in it.
Well, this is like original stuff then.
Yeah, this is 1940s.
Wow.
So we used to have a joke when I was working down here that the battleship was completely modernized from the main deck up. So
Okay, we have a question. Did someone spill yellow paint?
yeah, you have no idea how unhappy this actually makes me. The paint is because when the ship was in the Maritime Administration, or MARAD, aka mothballs, they had a team of people whose job it was to come in and spot paint rust.
Oh, is
And
that...
they spot painted with whatever color they had on hand. You know, they had some paint, like the yellow is supposed to be on aluminum because it has a mixture, and some of the terracotta is for steel. But the reality is there were really bored people. There's other art that is not sailor art, and graffiti, and even some invective and whatnot painted around. And you get into a space like this, and it's like, were you bored? You know, I like there's like a little handprint in front of me here, and I'm like, guys. But this is not a space that we have worked on restoring. This is pretty much how we found the space.
Wow.
And so, given that, it's pretty clean.
Yeah.
But yeah, we haven't done any work in here to repaint things back to the way they belong.
Yeah, because this is obviously... Let's look at the ladder over here. It's a
I'll
tough
let you go
place
up
to
there.
get into.
It is.
Very,
it's-
very steep.
It's funny, when you go around the corner, you can turn your camera on forest.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Wait. Sorry. David
oh,
has the camera.
so,
right now.
well, here, if I have the camera, I'll come around the corner. So,
I'll switch the other way.
yeah, there you go.
Hi, folks. Nice to meet you.
So this is our magic live stream cube that we put together, and part of why we're doing the stream today is to work the final bugs out of this, so we can move it around the ship and show you other places. But we got it all the way down the ladder, and I realized I couldn't get it farther into the space because it is literally so tight here that I couldn't get the cube through here.
All right, can you go back to the ladder real quick?
Go back to the ladder. There you go. What you looking
Go
for?
up the ladder.
Do you want me to actually go
Just
up?
Look up the ladder.
Look
more.
up the ladder.
Yeah, I can barely see some rungs right now.
There you go.
There you go. Perfect.
So the wiring, if you can see it in the overhead, that's on Broadway.
That's 3 decks above us. So
So we
Okay,
got any more
have a few
questions
for you,
or any?
David?
What was that?
what's
A
up?
few questions for you, David. Mr. White would like to know what you ate and how many hours you slept.
Oh, sleeping. So I'll start with the sleeping. So is that like official sleep in your bed or sleeping just because you stop moving for a few moments? Sailors
Does
have a
not
reputation.
specify.
Sailors have a reputation of being able to sleep anywhere at
I
any
can't.
time.
I
And
can't.
and we did our best to keep up that reputation. But typically you get anywhere from six to 8. Sometimes you get 8 hours of sleep. A typical night for me would have been 6 hours.
Yeah.
And then food, we fed pretty well. The galley, the main galley, and we'll do one of these from the galley one of these days, was pretty well stocked and pretty well staffed. And we had what's called a main line on the starboard side, and then the speed line on the port side. So the main line would cook, like for breakfast, would cook eggs to order and omelets, and they had bacon, and the speed line always had scrambled eggs, hash browns, stuff that was on the fly. And then for lunch, you would get a variety of things on the main line. The speed line for lunch, dinner, and mid-rats was always tube steaks, sliders, hot dogs and hamburgers.
Oh.
Hot dogs and hamburgers, and Frisbo fries. So Frisbo fries are like fake French fries. They're made out of some sort of reconstituted mashed potatoes. We used to refer to it as Purina, crew chow. But I was always so important that I needed to go through the speed line. And when I made rank later on and looked back, I was like, I was just dumb. I should have eaten on the main line because they had better food. But you had your choice on here of getting good food or kind of not so good food.
Yeah.
I ate a lot of hot dogs and hamburgers.
Well, from a sailor's perspective, did you have to do your dishes after, or did you just turn them over to the galley crew?
No, there was a scullery, and so the U.S. Navy, I got in trouble, and so please, anybody on the stream, forgive me if I slip. The correct phrase is mess cooking.
Mm-hmm.
We used to refer to it as mess cranking, and people who did it were called cranks. And then I was told recently when I was on a current Navy ship that you can't use that term anymore. It is hazing and pejorative.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, you mess cooked for 90 days if you were an E3 and below. So everybody that came on board that was an E3 and below did 90 days of mess cooking. The scullery was kind of the bottom. If you were really kind of had an attitude and didn't do real well, you ended up in the scullery. Above that was night crew on the galley, because you had to typically you would strip and wax and paint round the clock. Well, the mess decks are in use all the time, so it was really hard to get that kind of maintenance done, and it was done usually in the wee hours of the morning by the night crew of mess cooks. Strangely enough, that's where I was on the night crew, because I have a big mouth and I couldn't keep it shut. So, and then, you could go all the way up to some people are mess cooked in the chief's mess, some people mess cooked in the officer's wardroom. But those are the people that did the dishes, served, and did a lot of the sort of, I used to refer to it as the slave labor division, but, it was what it was. And it was pretty even-handed. Everybody did it, so.
We have a few questions about the main battery. In particular, is it still usable? And then also, could anyone go inside the turrets?
So is it still usable? So first, standard caveats. I was an engineman. I was a diesel mechanic. Although I did qualify enlisted surface warfare on here, I am not an expert on the 16-inch 50 caliber main battery. That being said, is it still usable? It is functional. It could be restored. We clearly, as a civilian organization, do not have any ammunition for it, nor will the Navy give us any ammunition for it, which is probably a good thing. Most of the ammunition has been destroyed. The Navy does not have battleships anymore. The ammunition that we were using in the 1980s, the ordnance is the proper term for it, was manufactured in the 40s or the 30s. And so that stuff has a shelf life, and it was probably past its shelf life when we were using it, and that was 30 years ago. So people always ask, could we bring the battleship back? And the answer is this machine, this ship, is tremendously well preserved. Yeah. And it really is a testament, and I'm not entirely objective, but it is a testament to my shipmates on how well this ship was laid up. She really was. She was laid up with the thought that she would be brought back again. We had a poster at the decommissioning that showed the dates of the first commissioning, the dates of the second commissioning. The third commissioning was 1984 to 1990, and then it said fourth commissioning ... And everybody just expected her to be brought back. But the reality is there aren't very many steamships in the Navy that don't split atoms for their speed.
Oh,
is that me?
that's you. That's your battery.
That's my battery. I'll go swap
okay.
batteries. But I'll still answer the question. So
Brian, you're still fine.
It's functional.
Cool.
But it would be almost impossible to use it because the skill sets necessary to operate this simply aren't in the Navy anymore, and the expendables like the powder and shells and whatnot are simply not available. Long answer, sorry.
So what was the second half of that question?
Does anyone still go inside?
Oh, yeah.
So we have tours that we're starting that we want to bring on board, and I'm also working on a virtual tour. So you can't just waltz into the turret, but we do have a pretty epic guided tour.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That we're working, and we should be adding it to the virtual tour pretty quick.
Part of the thing with it is it's really tricky to maneuver around in there. There are all kinds of crazy ladders, and at the moment, it's dirty.
It's tighter than this space.
Yeah, it's a lot tighter
Yeah,
than
I got
this
it back
space.
on. Give me a second.
You got any more questions?
This one's for you, Moran.
Oh.
How to raise the guns?
How to raise the guns? Well, it's
actually, give me a second, and I'll get you back on film.
okay. Well, raising the guns, we just played with those a little bit today because we've got a
just waiting
film
for
shoot coming up. It's a pretty epic process. We had to do it manually, and there will be a video about it very soon.
So there is a reason why the turret number 1 guns are not raised.
Yes.
And that is the fact that there's a bad bearing on the, I want to say it's the left gun. And
No, it's the right gun.
Is it right gun?
right
I knew
gun,
it was
yeah.
one of the sides. So we could only raise 2 of them, and then it would look dorky if
Yeah.
we only had 2 of them raised. So we typically only raise the guns on turret 2 and on turret 3.
Yeah.
And we recently lowered the guns on turret 3 in preparation for some work that's going to be done later this year. So.
Yeah, I kind of like having turret 1 down because then you can just walk right up to them and see how big they really are.
It is kind of cool.
It's pretty epic.
And we like to tell people, of course we planned this. So you could do just that. But the reality is we couldn't raise them if we wanted to. So maybe someday we'll get the bearing replaced. Right now it's a very manual process to raise and lower the guns. People are in there with wrenches.
Big wrenches.
But I know Missouri has theirs electrified, and I have a plan to electrify ours
Nice.
as the tech guy. But it's like, it is not on the top of the priority list.
Yeah, those pins are insane.
Uh,
You literally have to climb up the bulkhead and reach your arm in. There's a little crank that you have to turn, and it's super cool.
So John White said the volume is too low. I don't know whether that's yours or mine. Another question was asked in here: if needed, can the emergency diesel still be used to power parts of the ship? The answer is no, because they're still laid up. They're still full of cosmoline, and we haven't turned them over. I know that I went to the Historic Naval Ships Association conference 2 years ago before the COVID mess. And that was in Wisconsin, and the USS Cobia, which is a World War II era submarine, they can fire up their mains, and which was pretty epic as a diesel mechanic, as an engineman, to be in a diesel submarine with the mains running.
Wow.
I dream of being able to fire these up, and I think that dream is shared by our engineer. But again, that's probably many years down the road before we we have some of the more critical work done that will help us, that basically keeps us from having the bandwidth or the ability to do that right now. But it is a dream, and it's not one we're putting on the shelves.
I've heard rumors that the Radio Gang and some of the other ones, that the Mark 48 that we just got back in aft plot, they're hooking that thing up, so it's actually going to be able to.
Yeah, it's it's funny. I've been arguing a little bit with the Navy via International Shipbreakers down in Brownsville. I want to get a Mark 1 Able, which is a 5-inch fire control. It's for our secondary battery, so that I can disassemble it and hook it up to a computer simulator and have people watch it do the calculations. I can't take one of ours apart because it's an artifact. And everybody goes, oh, you need to go through Navy History and Heritage. Well, if Navy History and Heritage Command owns it, it's also an artifact. So I'm really looking for the Navy to let the scrapper let me have it. But right now the Navy's being very risk averse, and they're like, oh, it might have environmental cooties in it, and so it has to be destroyed. Which is it's a shame, because that's a analog computer. So now I'm hoping that I can find a museum or another one of the ships that has either extra parts, and I can put parts of one together. But it becomes a much harder evolution.
Yeah, because the insides of those analog computers are just mind-blowing.
So
what have we got? How are we looking on time?
It is 4:39.
Oh, awesome.
So I had to begin. I'm just perusing the comments here. That's all. So I will answer the Turret 2 question. My producer likely skipped some of those, which is good for him, honestly. And that's out of deference. I was on board during the Turret 2 accident and had friends of mine that were in the turret, but I will answer a couple items there. Turret 2 is effectively off limits. We do have to go in there to do some level of maintenance on occasion. We have raised the guns in there, which obviously required people going in. Turret 2 is not on a tour, will not be on a tour, is not a tour item, and we treat that area with a tremendous amount of respect. I know I made a commitment to the families of the 47 that we would not profit from anything surrounding the accident, and so again, long answer, but Turret 2 is effectively off limits outside of required maintenance. So
yeah.
Let's see. I know there's still damage in there, but it was painted. I believe a feeling that's Chris Miller. So, any other questions, guys? I'll scroll backwards here and see if I missed some. Hopefully, Ewok Pilot there, I answered your 16-inch question in excruciating detail. The short answer is could be used, won't be used, is not sufficient. There are not sufficient ammunition or powder to do that. So, let's see, what do we have right now? 40 viewers.
Nice. Thanks for jumping in with us.
Yeah, absolutely. This is fun. We didn't really advertise it too much. I mean, I think we said we were going to go live. A lot of it was, if you poke over the shoulder there, a lot of it was literally to test this and make sure that we could do this in the future. That's over our producer's shoulder. That's Forrest Hippensteel, and that's the piece of equipment that we're testing. We built a little cube that allowed us to do live stream with up to 8 cameras and 4 audio sources. There's still a couple little items to work out, but it's doing so much better than the first attempt.
And we're like 7 decks down inside the Citadel underwater.
Well, yeah, there is that. It makes wireless challenging. Wireless is sort of like doing wireless in a Faraday cage. So.
Because Battleship.
All right, so I'm gonna look here. Bill 31990. What was the top speed and the cruising speed? From my understanding, the Iowa class were the fastest battleships. We actually were, I believe. I think the official listed speed is 32 knots. I know they've gone a little bit faster than that. When we were on here, they've done somewhere between 34. I've heard people say 36. Press X to doubt. But it's they were quite a bit faster than their peers.
You told me one time about tacking at high speed.
Yeah. So one of my favorite things this ship is pretty stable, and she doesn't roll too much. I mean, she rolls, but it's not violent, and you kind of want to get a little motion out of it. And so you hear the word "stand by for heavy rolls" as the ship comes about, and you're like, So I used to like that, but it did get a little wet if you were on the main deck. But and most people don't realize that a steam vessel or a powered vessel, motor vessel, still has to tack, because you don't want to go perpendicular to the waves, because if you can get the front of the ship on one wave and the back of the ship on another, you will still break the keel of the ship because it's not being supported. So you still quarter swells. You just don't care about the wind.
There's a question about shaft seals being checked for leakage.
So
Yep,
we
do that.
check the shaft seals monthly. There is, I would like to say 0 leakage, but I think we have one drip every, 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
That's not bad.
And it's like a little tiny drip. It literally has a Home Depot bucket under it, and we change it once a month. So it's less than 5 gallons in a month. And that is the only one that we have. And my numbers may be off a little bit, so please don't, but they're in that neighborhood. It is it's a very, very small, and it's the only issue. And it's not really an issue. Shaft seals always leak on every vessel.
Yep.
And we do a tremendous amount of proactive maintenance on the ship. We dive the hull twice a year. We check the sacrificial anodes. We have an impressed current cathodic protection system, what's called a drip system over the side. We are very, very serious about hull preservation, because we do not want to be one of the other ships that people talk about that has hull issues. Right now, we do not have hull issues. We do not have shaft seal issues. There's another ship I don't want to be disparaging about, because they have a really tough road right now. But I remember when we first opened this ship, their engineer was on a video, and he said, "I knew we were in trouble when we had water in spaces that we don't normally have water in." And I thought, oh my goodness, one of my goals on here, and I know one of Mike Getcher's, the senior engineer on here, his goal is to never, ever have a space that we normally have water in. So,
Speaking of restoration, there's a question about our helicopter, specifically why it doesn't have blades.
Yeah, good question.
So, do you want to take it, or do you want me to take it?
No, I don't know. I just
so
know they're not on it.
The blades are stored under turret 3 right now.
What are the blades made out of?
They are
Wood.
made out of wood, and that Paiseki Hup is basically a beer can under popsicle sticks. It is the most terrifying aircraft I have ever looked at. I am so glad I never had to fly in one. But the reason that the blades are not attached to the helicopter right now is there are a number of brackets that are used to suspend the blades, because they are made out of wood, and they will, if they droop too much over time, they will permanently droop.
Yeah.
And those brackets, we don't have those. And so they're being manufactured, and as soon as we can get those brackets built and the other priorities around there, then we will get that done. It is on the list of things to do. Unfortunately, there are so many things, including this COVID mess, that have shuffled our priorities. But those blades are there, all of them. We have them. They're literally in a rack behind the tail of turret 3 right now, and someday we will get them back on the hub.
So this is an interesting question. We're asking about if parts from other battleships were taken during a refit for the 80s modernization.
So one of the best things that I've been able to do in my career was return a few bits to one of the other battleships.
Nice.
Because we did take parts in the 1980s, and we took them with great abandon. And I feel kind of guilty about that now, because I'm on the leadership team of the museum. But at the time, as an 18-year-old kid, it was like, well, you have them and we need them. And it was, I think all 4 of the battleships sort of raped and pillaged the museum fleet when they were trying to stay operational. Keeping these things operational in the 80s was very difficult because, again, it was kind of a joke, completely modernized from the main deck up, but it really was the truth.
Yeah.
And this engineering plant, you just couldn't get parts for it.
Wow.
All right. So let's see.
Last question is good.
Does the Navy work with the museum and give any kind of support? That is a tricky question. I'm A, retired Navy. B, we have a very good relationship with the Navy, and we would like to keep it that way. So I'm gonna dance the question a little bit, because the short answer is we have a great relationship with the Navy. No, they do not financially support us. The longer answer is they shouldn't financially support us. They're busy. They have ships that they need to support that are out there, flying the flag and doing the work of the country. A lot of the museum fleet will put their hand out and say the Navy should be doing X. And a typical response for that would be, why did we donate the ship then? And so our take has always been that it's our job to maintain the ship. It is our job to put in the effort, the time, the dollars to do the maintenance on the ship and to bring her up to speed and to present her to the public. And then, of course, now we're moving on to the National Museum of the Surface Navy, which is makes the Iowa representative of all of the surface fleet, which I think she's a great representative of that. And so our partnership with the Navy is one where we want to partner on message, we want to partner on mission, but financially, their job is to keep today's sailors out there. I have 3 adult children who are all contemplating joining the Navy right now. I want the Navy spending their dollars on their ships. I'll spend my dollars on my ship.
Yeah.
So BB-61, I was not part of the decommissioning crew. I actually left the ship in July of 1989, just in the middle of her final cruise. So she came back off of that Mediterranean cruise, went straight into Portsmouth and began decommissioning.
Oh, wow.
So she was decommissioned about 6 months after I left the ship.
Where'd you leave the ship?
In Rota, Spain, surprisingly enough. It was, life is full of circles.
Full circle.
So I actually did not wait for Marseille. I left in Rota. So, so let's see, what else do we have here? You're welcome for answering the question. We try to be super transparent. There's nothing that we want to hide.
Well, while
So,
you're looking, I got one.
Sure.
If we're trying to do live feeds and all kinds of stuff, and we're trying to bring you into spaces of the ship that we can't, like this one, where we can't take tours. So if you know battleships and you want to see spaces, let us know and we will try to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Please let us know. And then, of course, at the end of the month, which is like now,
Yeah.
I'm going to be pulling. We had launched a big part of the virtual tour behind a paywall because we didn't have any attendance, and we thought this would be a great way to make up some of our gate revenue. Going back to the question that we don't get funding from the Navy. As it turns out, people weren't really excited about buying access to a virtual tour, so I'm going to pull that out from under the paywall and make it so that everybody can get to it, with some exceptions. So some of the really exceptionally cool bits, like inside the turret and the gun room, we would like you to be a donor, and we'll just check to see whether you're a supporter of the ship, and then you'll have access to that. So there's no set cost or anything, but we'll be pulling that out. If you have places you want to go on the ship, things that you want to see, send us an email. Send us an email to either the contact site on the website, or you can send it to it@labattleship.com, and I will get it. The rest of my team will get it, and we will put places on the list of places to go. We'll put spaces on there, and then we'll go in and we're doing 360 photography and moving around. It's kind of cool. There was a question on here about was the Iowa going to be scrapped?
Oh, please
So
no.
that goes back to a little bit about the Turret 2 question. And without, belaboring that point, you had 3 Iowa battleships, the Iowa-class battleships that were already museums. There was a pretty strong argument that we didn't need a 4th. coupled with that was the Navy got a black eye every time the ship was mentioned in the press because of how the Turret 2 stuff was handled, and I'm not going to go into that. But sufficient time needed to elapse to where that was old news.
Yeah.
And then she was saved. There was a tremendous amount of effort that went into this. My boss, Jonathan Williams, spent decades of his life trying to save this ship prior to us getting it. You know, I always say I'm the longest serving crew member because I'm on the staff and I served on the ship in '87. But then, you know, I took 20 years off. And those 20 years, Jonathan has been working tirelessly to try to save this ship. And so you look at that, and for somebody who has put in the most time, I've really got to hand it to him and the group of people that he was working with. He clearly didn't work alone. But, you know, there were a ton of other people. I've even got to give a shout out to the groups that didn't get it. Marilyn Wong up in San Francisco in the Historic Naval Ships Memorial at Pacific Square put a tremendous amount of effort in. There was a Stockton group that put effort in. Robert Kent, who was our first CEO, put a tremendous amount of effort in. There were a lot of people that worked together, that worked very hard to save this ship, and it really was a group effort. And you know, there's tensions between people and groups, as there always is. But you know, as a former crew member, I always look, and I am eternally grateful for everybody who put effort forward to try to save this vessel. And ultimately, I'm thrilled that a group did succeed to do so. John White says sound is low.
Can you hear me when I talk, John? Is it David's mic or is it mine?
So, come back up here. Did some of the Iowa's anti-aircraft guns get sold to the USS Texas after the refit? I have no idea. I know Texas has a ton of really cool AA guns, and I know that we have been trying desperately to get a 40 millimeter so that we could put it on display, and so far we have not been successful with that. We've run into some very interesting things. That happens to still be a weapon. And we had a line on one out of state, and BATF said that we could get it as long as we completely destroyed it, you know, before it crossed state lines. And I'm like, yeah, as a museum, that kind of defeats
really
the purpose.
us.
So, you know, I don't really want one that's destroyed. So, let's see what else we have here. Did the vibrations cause systems not to work or to leak? The ship is actually designed around the vibration. There are all kinds of shock mounts and whatnot. So, you know, it was not a surprise. Shipbuilding was not new when she was born. And so I was looking around here. We're in an engineering space. Things are pretty well bolted down here. Yeah. But up in some of the other spaces, and of course on modern ships as well, you'll see spiral wire mounts that will absorb the vibration, the shock mounts. Particularly you see that in the radio room where sensitive equipment is. That bombardment computer that we just, which is an electromechanical computer, is on a shock mount.
Yeah.
So we did not have a problem with vibration breaking stuff because the systems were designed with the vibration in mind.
Along those lines, there's a question about what kind of steam Iowa uses.
So you're singing my song. That's a snipe question. So Iowa uses 8 Babcock & Wilcox M-style 600-pound twin furnace superheated steam boilers. I got my enlisted surface warfare on here. I can do this all day.
Say it faster.
But it is 600-pound superheat is the short answer to that question. And the boilers are water tube boilers. No, I'm sorry. Yes, water tube boilers. So you can make a lot more steam faster in a water tube boiler than you can in a fire tube boiler. The difference being a fire tube boiler is what's on top of a traditional locomotive. Yeah. So in that one, the water is around the tubes and the fire is in the tubes.
Yes.
And so you're boiling that large thermal mass. In a water tube boiler, the fire is around the tubes, so there's a lot of heat surface around there, and there's a smaller amount of water but more tubes to make up the same amount, so it goes to steam quite a bit faster. And you can make them quite a bit larger, and they scale, whereas a fire tube boiler does not scale very well. So
Okay, for such a large, this is more of an observation. For such a large ship, it is surprising how cramped it is in some size places.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Definitely.
As
Very,
a-
very good observation. Thank you.
As a crew
Yes.
member, I'll comment on that. The Iowa is a life support system for 3 turrets, and at the time a dozen 5-inch 38s. The crew is kind of crammed in as an afterthought. The real effort went into the weapon systems and into the armament. And it's an old school ship. It's a battleship, and most people think that ships that are gray and are owned by the Navy are battleships. But the battleship is a very specific kind of surface warrior. And it's designed literally to come alongside like a ship of the line or a ship of the line of battle. It is designed to come alongside other ships and beat the snot out of each other until one
Go
of them
boom.
sinks. And so we don't build ships like that anymore, but there's a tremendous amount of armor and equipment, and then it's like, oh yeah, and the crew.
Yeah.
So much different than like a Gerald Ford class carrier, which was designed with the crew very much as part of the design. And a co-ed crew and privacy and all kinds of stuff that went into the Gerald Ford class. We didn't have any of that. The ship was born and built during World War II, and 100% of it was about getting her out there and getting her on point and on mission quickly.
It's not as bad as a submarine, though.
She is not as bad. A common question
At least
I
an
get,
older submarine.
did you hot rack? No, we did not. We had plenty of racks. So.
We have a pretty general question about electricity on the ship. Not sure if that's modern time or during service.
It's interesting right now.
We turn the ship off at night right now because as for cost cutting, and it's cold because we
It's
turn
like
the
cold
ship
right now.
off at night. So there's a lot of equipment on the ship even now, lights and transformers that shed heat. And we turn the ship off to save money. And of course, if it's off, it's not shedding heat and it's sitting in water and it's winter and it's cold.
Armored icebox.
That's what we call her. But she generated her own power. Obviously, when we were on board, we had we had 8 SSTG ship service turbo generators, 1.2 megawatt each, and then we had the 2 emergency diesel generators, which were 360 kilowatt each. I know about the diesels. Yeah, the rest of it, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I remember that. But today we bring shore power in. It is standard 3-phase, 440 volt, 400 amp shore power, and then we are using the original ship's distribution and switchboards to ship that throughout the ship. We're working on a much more efficient 115 volt secondary power system, so that when we turn the ship off, certain things will stay on that are wired separately from the ship's distribution, and those are things like alarms, the computer core, the network core, the security cameras, and then certain offices, my office. That way I can work 24/7.
The cathodic protection.
The cathodic protection obviously stays on. So, all right, Robert Kelly, hey, good to see you. In reference to the question about the size of the spaces, I don't know about you, but the spaces seemed so much bigger when I served on her. Dude, I'll throw myself under the bus. So I've been dieting lately to try to get rid of this spare tire, and I'm down to just twice what I weighed when I was on the ship. I was 6'1" and I was 130 pounds when I was on board. And so now I'm like 230 pounds, so which is better than 250 pounds, but it's still, twice what I was before. I was thinking that as I came down here, one of my knees was hurting, and I'm like, man, I am not the kid I mean, I feel like a kid. I love the space, but I'm like, oh, my knees hurt and I'm fat. So,
Well, I've been trying to film up in spot 1 and spot 2, and it's not, it's cramped up there, but it's just a strangely shaped space. So trying to get underneath the
rangefinder.
Yeah, and show both sides of it, and still thinking that 6 people were stationed in there. It's just
but there
crazy.
were 6 skinny kids that were stationed in there. So there have been a couple questions about differences between North Carolina and or Alabama and Iowa. So they are different classes. They are in fact different designs. I've been on a couple of the other battleships, and I'm not going to go, class by class. I could, but you know, I try not to totally geek out on battleship stuff all the time, even though I work here. But there are differences. Some of the differences are in the main battery, and I'm not as familiar with North Carolina, but I know some of the ships very close to us had a 16-inch 45 caliber, slightly different main battery, still 16-inch projectile, but shorter barrel. So large-scale gunnery, if anybody wonders why it's a 16-inch 45 caliber or a 5-inch 38 caliber, the way to remember that, or the way I remember it, is the diameter of the round multiplied by the caliber gives you the length of the barrel. So the 16 inches that we have here are 16 times 50 inches long. So some of the other ships would have a 1645. So
Okay.
the barrel would be shorter. A 5-inch 38 is 5 times 38 inches long. Today there are 5-inch 94s, which are just these big long 5-inch guns. So I'm sorry I don't have specifics on the North Carolina, the Alabama questions. We do want to, I mean, I would be happy to correspond. I just don't know. So, but I could sick our historian on that.
Yeah.
He'd probably enjoy that.
Yeah.
The ship's phone's working like the New Jersey. So, sort of, is the answer. I'm going to give a shout out to my former boss at Google, Joe Pistrito, along with a number of other people like Gary Blackney, who's a former AT&T guy. In the 1980s, when I was on board here, we used a thing called a Dimension 2000, which was basically a hotel PBX, a large-scale hotel PBX, a private branch exchange telephone system. We have the Dimension working. The thing is, I won't let them turn it on as the tech guy because we're cycling the power up and down, and it's really hard on the equipment. So some of the other ships, and I don't know what New Jersey has done, some of them have simply put a modern PBX in the Dimension room and tied all the phones together so all the ship's phones work. I really want to get the Dimension restored because it is an artifact, and working artifacts is something that we have kind of in our DNA, particularly from a technology point of view. I can always go in there and put some sort of Cisco voice over IP and then tie the phones together, but I don't want to do that. So the short answer, longer, medium answer is that the Dimension system is working. I am working on getting clean, isolated, permanent power into the Dimension room. And I have already engineered the solution which will tie it to our voice over IP. So you can pick up a VoIP phone, or one of our office phones, dial a 3-digit extension and get a Dimension dial tone. Dial a 4-digit extension and ring any phone on the ship. And the inverse, where you can pick up a Dimension phone, dial a 4-digit extension, get a voice over IP dial tone, dial 3 more and get a phone, or dial 9 and get an outside line, and so you'll be able to call out from anywhere on the ship.
That's cool.
So, and that's kind of cool. We've done the integration, but I don't have the power solved. I did give the shout out to Joe simply because he's been working with us on the inverter system to get the power working. So it is working, but we don't want to be flipping it on and off every day.
So how do we look on time?
It is 5:06. We are plus 6. So
And my battery's going to die.
yeah, mine already did, I think. So I'm just gonna
Couple
come.
last
I think
question.
there's one good question here.
Okay, go.
How did it take a while to build up enough pressure in the boilers to get underway?
Yes, absolutely, without question. When you see people like the California getting underway in Pearl Harbor in a very short period of time, that's just unheard of, and it can actually damage the equipment. We lit off 24 hours prior to getting underway.
Wow.
A minimum of 24 hours prior to getting underway. It did not take all 24 hours to raise steam, but you wanted to bring the temperature of the plant up slowly. And so we would light spot fires, and then we would bring up what we called hotel steam, which is, I want to say 150 PSI. It's auxiliary steam, might be more than that. And then we would light off the superheat side, and we bring the superheat up, and we would roll the turbines, so that they heated evenly. There's a thing called a jacking gear. And then, when we had the steam and the boilers were up and the plant was sort of awake, then we would go ahead and get underway. So unlike the Aegis class, it's a gas turbine or any of the gas turbines, they come in and turn the key on, you know, start it like a car and back it out of the garage. We did not do that.
Were you always using all of the boilers?
No, we rarely used all of the boilers. All of the boilers online was usually either an emergency situation or a situation where we were proving we could do it in case of emergency. So, yeah, with all 8 boilers online, if I remember the number correctly, and I might be off by a little bit, but I want to say we burned something in the neighborhood of 100,000 gallons an hour of fuel if we had all 8 boilers online. We carried 1.8 million gallons of diesel fuel, so you could do that for a while.
Yeah.
But it's expensive, and and there's no reason to do that. You know, the difference is you have 4 boilers online, you can cruise at 12 to 18 knots. You have 8 boilers online, I can go at 30 knots.
How many props would be turning at that point?
We always turned all 4.
All 4?
Yeah, if you're dragging screws, then sorry.
You can't feather them.
Airplanes have props. Ships
Yes.
have screws.
Yep.
But no, these are not controllable at all.
Wow.
And so if you're dragging a screw, it's inefficient.
Yeah.
And again, it's funny because it creates another problem in that the screw will want to pinwheel. So if you lock a shaft because something is wrong, you literally have to lock it, and there's a mechanism to do that, because if you leave it loose, it will pinwheel, and if something is wrong, like a bad line shaft bearing, well, the shaft's turning, so what the heck.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, yes, thank you, Irish American cousin. Did I treat feed water? That was the other thing I did, was I ran the distilling plant. Yes, we absolutely treated the water, the feed water to the boilers, and there was a whole water lab to do that. And to this day, 0.02 parts per million of any contaminant, that was the limit to go to the boiler. We could have a lot worse water going to the humans, but the boilers got 0.02 parts per million, and honestly, it was 0.02. It was less than 0.02 parts per million of any contaminant, including salt. To go and to basically make it out of the distilling plant. And we used a distilling plant. And yeah, I was on a recent modern Navy ship, and I'm like, hey, where's your distilling plant? They're like, what are you talking about? We don't have a still. And I'm like, no, I mean, how do you make water? They're like, oh, we use reverse osmosis. I'm like, well, how does that work? They go over to the wall, they're like, click, like that. And I was like, oh, I hate you. Because we boiled our water and then condensed it. So Robert Kelly verifying 100,000 gallons per day on our way to Norway from the Mediterranean. So I'm just scanning these. John White, thanks for the kind words. Love hearing thank you. Don't often hear it, honestly. So it's nice when we do. So, all right. I think that's it. We're a little bit. We're 10 minutes over, and I've actually have people waiting to rig this cube up 6 decks so we can use it tomorrow, and then we have to turn the ship off. So, guys, thanks for joining. We had 38 people on, and this is fantastic. Certainly appreciate it, guys. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
All right.